Well, Dave, welcome to The Raw. Mate, she's a big weekend, 150 years in the making, so literally that doesn't come around every weekend, does it? You must be pretty fired up about getting together this weekend.
Yeah, looking forward to it this weekend. It's, as we've talked about with other people, it's, you once in a lifetime you get to come back and celebrate the 150. But again, in 25 years' time, when we go to the next one, I could be dribbling out the side of the mouth and incoherent in another 25 years.
Sounds like you're describing Saturday night to be honest.
Anyway. I think there's got to be some dribbling.
Yeah, no, definitely there will be some lies told. I'll give you the tip. So yeah,
pretty special number though, right? I mean, it must when you actually get a chance to sort of reflect on it. I mean, it obviously is a special club for a very important part of your life.
Yeah, it has been. Yeah, it was interesting. I had no idea who I was going to play for after I left school, and and then I don't know how I ended up down at Blues, but I did. So I think they might have been recruiting at that stage. But it was a great club, and it was a great club to play for, and still lifelong friends, and some of those lifelong friends I'll get to see again that I haven't seen since the end of the season, end of my career. So it'll be good to catch up on them and just see how their lives have been tracking over the last 30 odd years.
And those sliding door moments, Goof. I'm thinking of the story that you told me for the book about how you were sitting getting I don't know if third degree is quite the right word from Gary Muir, but you had Brent Shepherd sitting out in the car waiting to whisk you off to Woodlands.
Yeah, no, that was interesting. It's I was playing senior B at the stage. So when I left school, the superstars at that stage were Milton Haig and brother Ginge. So they moved into the senior team, and I ended up playing B rugby. So, enjoyed the year there. And then Brent Shepherd come and saw me and said to me they've got a spot open for me. I was ambitious at the time, and he said, it's there's an opportunity to come to Woodlands and play seniors. So I walked into the club rooms and I was just doing the right thing. Brent Shepherd was sitting out in the car waiting to take me to Woodlands, and I walked in and Gary was there, and I just said to Gary, "Hey, listen, I've just got something to tell you that I'm on my way to Woodlands." And if you know Gary,
yes,
Gary's a pretty good negotiator, and he says, "Whoa, let's sit down and have a talk about this." And so Brent was sitting out there. I think he was, half an hour waiting for me, and Gary and I had a talk. And by the end of the talk, Gary said, we'll give this some thought. So I had to go out and tell Brent Shepherd I wasn't coming out, and that was the last Woodlands, as close as I got to going to Woodlands, but it was close. I got in the car with Brent. I think she was all over. So yeah, but
the rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history. Yeah. 8 shields, which is pretty unique in today's environment, isn't it? So,
mate, I don't know. To be fair, I'll just who is harder to say no to, Pup or Gary? That's actually that's a tough one.
Yeah, Pup wasn't too happy with me. He might have given me an uppercut or something in the next time I met him on the paddock. But, Gary he's a bit of a smooth talker, Gary. And, I did have a bunch of friends down there. And, the aspiration is always to play for the senior team. And, it was just, but you see opportunities at times. Sometimes you got to take those opportunities. But it probably, in hindsight, it was a good move for me to stay where I was.
You mentioned those 8 shields, and it's just it's actually hard to fathom now when you look at teams have a run or clubs have a wee run for 3 years, and then there'll be a turnover of players, and then they'll some will really struggle. But to just maintain that level for so long, and I imagine there was a turnover of players. But what was so special about that era at Blues?
A lot of people. It's a good question because a lot of people talk to me about. They say, "Oh, you had a stacked team in regards to rep players." And like you said, over 8 years is quite a turnover. I always found the key to winning it was the base of players that we had there that weren't superstars. And I always found, even when you got to the semi-finals and the finals, we were starting to progress into our pre-season games for Southland and those sorts of things. So, the mind was in two places. The body was starting to, there were some games starting to clock up, for pre-seasons and that for Southland. So when we got to those finals, there was key individuals that, yes, we had the likes of Simon Culhane, Ian Cross and all those sorts of guys that could kick goals and that, but it was those guys those club players for years that just, just stuck at there and just gave it their all that carried us through. So, I can name players that, that I've got a huge amount of respect for that, that, you know, I'll see over the next weekend, and I'll be thanking them for what they did for rugby, you know, and for my career over the years. But yeah, huge amount of respect for some of those guys who never got into rep teams.
Yeah, especially these guys like Kerry Flowers and John Fry and Roger Erskine, those sorts of guys that, I mean, they would have come up against some big packs, I'd imagine, during that. Blues didn't always have the biggest pack, did they?
No, they didn't. And, you know, we were probably quite innovative in regards. Sometimes we, like the Star teams and the Woodlands teams, and they were big boys, and we just had to be innovative on how we played our lineouts and all those sorts of things. But, you know, a guy like John Fry, John Fry could probably still run from here to Auckland, you know what I mean? And he's probably in his late 50s. But those sorts of guys just had hearts on them like lions, and I remember times where, you know, teams used to get frustrated. You know, guys like John were just guys you wanted to clean rucks out to get quick balls so we could feed our backline, and he just did that all day. And, you know, he was just a fantastic guy and a fantastic footballer, but he used to get the shit knocked out of him. You know, like, I don't know how he got up sometimes, because teams got sick of him because he was in every ruck. He was, you know, not trying to, you know, bowl people out of rucks, and he was just, you know, just one of those guys that got under people's skins. But yeah, huge respect for them.
You must just have tormented Star through that era, because how many finals did you beat them in? And they were like thinking about Paddles and Richard Beckers, and they just kept going and kept getting beaten by you guys.
Yeah, that's a funny one, because we played, before the rain started, we played Star in a final at Les George, and we lost that final. And then I think the next year, Greg Spencer was coaching Woodlands, and he had an opportunity we come towards the end of the season, and we were on borderline if we were going to make the top four or not. And he had a game that could influence the season and knock us out. And so he played all his reserves against another team. And, you know, and Brent Shepherd come back to me and said that Greg Spencer's logic was that if we didn't, we're going to end up getting relegated, to be fair, in regards to the city. He said, we didn't get rid of the Blues team, we're not going to stop them for 10 years. And that's the words out of Greg Spencer's mouth, and that ended being was 8 years that, you know, that we ploughed on. And I guess in the 9th year we were trying to win 9 in a row. We ended up having to play a pre-season games against Otago in Dunedin, so all our rep guys ended up being out of the team, and we played a semi-finals. I think it was against Albion or something that year, and we just lost out to them for just trying to defend it for the 9th year. So
that was 87 through to 94. So there's your 8 years. Like, as you sort of reflect on that, are there one or two that stand out, or I mean, you'll take 8. They must have got harder and harder as you went, did they?
Oh yeah, no. There's a couple. There's one we played Star, and there must have been about 4 or 5 minutes to go in the game. They got an intercept, and they got the lead, and the whole stadium, the stand was just, you know, the Star players, the supporters and everything, the players and that were going off their lid. You know, they thought this was the end of the game. We're standing in behind the posts, and so between us, Simon and myself and a couple of others, we made a plan. Okay, we're going to do a short kick onto one side. We're going to get the ball, cut the phases, and then, you know, we're going to be there, and we're in a position to have a crack at winning this game. You know, and by the time we got back to halfway, you know, they took their time taking the kick. It was only a couple of minutes to go. So we won the kick off. We got a couple of rucks, and then I looked up, and then all of a sudden, here's Simon slicing through them, and he scores under the post. You know, and I look around, and all I could see was Murray Super running across the front of the stand, just going like this, the whole stand, and the place was erupting.
It's the raised fingers.
So because we're in a podcast, there's a couple of one-finger gestures. Yeah. Sorry, giving it the Mertens.
Yeah, and there was one against Central Pirates. We played against Central Pirates. We should have lost that game. We had an absolute shocker, you know, and we won that game, and you know, and it stays in my mind, but. The thing that really sticks with me, I went to a wedding about 15 years later, and there was Wayne McCallum and Ox Haynes. they're at this wedding, and everything started off nice and polite, and we were all good, and then they started to get a few beers into them. Well, did they give it to me? They started getting me you effing blues, so and so. It was all in good jest, but
Sounds it.
and they just said you just broke our hearts and everything. You didn't deserve to win it, but they just went on all night, and then I saw they had their 75th a few weeks ago.
Didn't get an invite?
No, I didn't get an invite, but I saw it on Facebook there, and I was just that close to sending a message and to Ox and Wayne to say, hey, listen, I'm still here, enjoy it. You haven't seen the Galbraith Shield, but I thought better of that one. So,
that was their one and only final, Galbraith Shield.
Yeah, it was,
final,
So it hurt them, and I can understand why, because I think we got a penalty in the end, and Eon kicked a 50-metre penalty goal, and the penalty wasn't deserved either, I don't think. So but so no, there was some great finals, and it slips from your memory some of the I guess some of the finals and how they finished in that. But I don't think there was ever an easy one where we just cruised away. They're all bitterly fought right to the end.
Because in the context of it, there was a Galbraith Shield, but there was Southland wide competitions as well. Obviously, there's no Super Rugby, so you've got everybody who can is playing. There's no Netflix. The club rooms are, Saturday night. It's just a different scene, I guess, to what we have now.
Oh yeah, no, the club rooms were chocker. I can remember, we used to line up after we'd won the final, and we'd go to the club rooms, and they'd just be absolutely chocker. And there's a special march in there and those sorts of things. But yeah, there was no room. We were playing. I think, top of the head, we were playing, a good. 15, 17 games or a season, and they were tough. There was times, I remember playing the likes of Bluff down in Bluff and those sorts of things. And even my first few years playing club rugby, I reckon I had a bust nose and a bleeding nose every weekend playing club rugby, because I was hooking in those days, and I was getting an uppercut from somebody in the Bluff team or the Nightcaps. Those sorts of teams. But it was hugely the crowds on the touchline were, they were up there in regards to their passion and everything too. So totally different to today's environments.
Another thing I enjoyed learning about too was, I guess, the progression. Even a Simon Culhane, who obviously went to the very top of the game, he did an apprenticeship right through from the age groups, right through to 21 to Bs to right through before making that Prems team. It was a real sort of you had to pay your dues in those days, didn't you? Yeah,
you did. Yeah, and I think he played for Blues, and I don't know if he played for school, but he played for Blues through the grades and those sorts of things. But yeah, it's I think when I first went into Blues, that's when I met him and Eon and those sorts of things, and they just had a passion for training. You go to training, and they were, straight after the games, they were doing 20, 30 minutes of goal kicking and all those sorts of things. You could see that the dedication was there, and they got the rewards, they got the lollies for it as they went through their careers.
Obviously, you come back, yourself and Simon come back involved in a coaching capacity. Was those similar sort of methods there to get the guys, Blues going at that time?
Yeah, it's I think what we learn out of club rugby is that, and over those years, I think it's slightly different now. It was just the culture that you build up, and we had a real culture in our club team. We had about 8 guys, Phil Johnson's, Grant Beardsley's, Eddie Sager, Steve Winter, myself and Simon and Eon and that. We used to go to the gym together, and that was probably before our time, so we used to train together, and it was a culture of, we played on the field together, and we did a lot of things off the paddock together. And we sort of, when Simon and I got together for Rep Rugby, it was, that mindset was that we needed to build a hell of a good culture, and that was something that a team, if you wanted to perform, you need to have that good culture. And you can see in some of the teams that are really performing now, you even look at the Warriors over the weekend. I've watched their last couple of games and how they've performed, because they've got a good culture and a coach that's grown that culture. It's amazing to watch.
in terms of that training aspect, Sav. I don't know if I didn't realise what I was getting myself into coming down to Invercargill and getting a club coach who used to do a Saturday training run before the actual game, and bringing that to the club situation.
So unique.
Yeah. Speaking as a self-confessed, incredibly lazy trainer, it was.
I think we got you into some sort of state of fitness, didn't we?
Yeah. Still down up, still horrify me, to be honest. Yeah.
You've been a big part of this too, Nath. We should talk about this too, because I don't know what have you done the word count on how many words you put together?
Yeah, it's good. That gives me an in for a story a little bit later on. Nick, it's got an apology to make to Goof coming up, but yeah, it's been really great actually, because I probably haven't had much of an association with the club since I put the boots away. So this in the process of got approached sort of towards the end of last year to write an updated history. There was a fantastic book done by Ross Lyons for the centennial of the club, and there was an opportunity there to sort of cover off the last 50 years or so of the club. So it was great to sort of reconnect with a few people, including Goof, and sort of and catch up on a few stories and put them together for a book. I'm not sure how truthful the whole if it's fiction or non-fiction, there's probably a bit of a combination of both. Yeah, so no, it's been good fun, but yeah, it's about 25,000 words. But unfortunately, there's this one wee error that and I don't quite know how between Gary and I we've managed to. So at the back of the book, we've this is all Gary actually. Gary has named the Blues 15 of all time, and old mate over here makes an appearance, but somehow we've called him George Henderson in the in the lineup, and it's gone right through the whole editing process and all that sort of thing. So I
saw the team, and I went through it, and I saw George Henderson, and I said to someone, I got no idea who was George. What year was he?
And how did I not make the team?
To be fair, I'm sort of the other way in regards to the team where, and everyone's got a different opinion on what sort of team they're. You know, you've got a team where there's guys that played one season, played 2 or 3 games, but they're All Blacks, or those sorts of things. Were they the best players that ever played club rugby? Because and no disrespect to Ginge, when he played club rugby, his mind wasn't on club rugby. He played smoke and mirrors when he was playing club rugby. But when he went to the next level, that was where he was at. But but this George Henderson, he had me beat.
Congratulations, mate. It's you.
I'm glad you've cleared that one up. Thanks for that.
Yeah, so you might
this is the problem,
George, a bit over the weekend.
You write 25,000 words, and all you're worried about is the one you got wrong. I mean, let's not. It's I know what a passion project it was for you, and I think it's a really important thing, though, right? I mean, any sporting organisation that can have a weighty tomb like that, but actually captures its history really well, I think is massively important. So difficult, and that's obviously you get the conversations that you've had, but also I guess the bedrock of record keeping as well, which is not easy for any organisation, right? But the organisations that do that well, man, that's what this weekend's all about, obviously, from Blues' point of view. But I think capturing it like that's just so vital, right?
Well, when we think about it, so 150 years ago, there was a bunch of blokes who managed to get themselves, I don't even know how they did it, they got themselves out around the beach and all the way to Riverton to play this game against the Riverton club. It would have been a massive day out. I hope they had a beer afterwards and enjoyed themselves. I'm sure they did, but that was 150 years ago. You think about everything that's changed in the meantime, but the thing that hasn't changed is that on a Saturday afternoon, a bunch of blokes want to get together and have a game of footy.
It'll probably take me a week to get home after going to Riverton. That's right. It's probably Roger Ramsey was involved in that.
Hey, what about winning it as a coach? I mean, you and Nibs did that in 2003, I think. Yeah, when you won the Galbraith Shield. Tell us about how important that was for you. As with the club being so important.
Yeah, no, it was, and I'll go back a wee bit on the year. I think we coached for 3 years. And we started to build a reasonably good, again, I don't think it was the best squad that ever have taken the field for Blues, but again, the culture was good. We had some key players and the likes of Sarah Bai, James Wilson, and there'd be 2 or 3 others in there. We, the year before, spent time just developing the squad, and we played Woodlands a couple of times that year, and we got absolutely trounced. And Brent Shepherd would come around, and Michael, I can't remember the other coach's
Cunningham.
name. Mike Cunningham.
Yep.
He was coaching. So they'd come around after the game, and they'd say, "Oh, nice work." They'd beat us by 40 points, and they'd say, "Oh, well done, boys. You'll get better. You'll get better." And then, as the season went on, we got thumped again, and Pup would come around and he says, "Oh, pick your lip up, boys." And then the last game we played them, he looked at Nibs and he says, "Oh, what's that on the ground, Nibs?" And Nibs said, "Oh, what are you looking?" He says, "Oh, I think it's your lip." So anyway,
File that one away.
filed that one away, and
Yeah.
Nibs can hold a grudge.
Oh, yeah.
And he's got that wee man syndrome. And anyway, the next year we played them in pre-season, and we beat them in pre-season. And Mike and Pup come around and says, "Oh, good effort, boys. We got a few out." So we played them in the first round. We beat them again. And they come back and says, "Oh, we've got a few injuries, we've got a few stags coming back at some stage, but it won't be till the second round." So we beat them in the second round, we beat them in the round robin competition. And Pup looked at us and says, "Oh, well done, boys." And he said, "We see you again. We're going to have Clark Dermody and Jimmy Cowan. We're going to have all the guns back." So when we played them in that final, and I think there was a conversion kick from the touchline by either Jeremiah Boy or James or something, or the final whistle went. Well, I turned around and I looked down the touchline, and here's Brent Shepherd, and his mouth was, to lose to us. They lost, 3 or 4 times that year. His mouth was hanging open down there, and the whole crowd was going nuts. But that's my vision of the final, was looking around and seeing Pup, with his lip hanging on the ground. But it was a good, a squad that probably wasn't the best squad that's ever been produced, but it was just a team that played for each other, and they had some key players, and everyone just played for, on that final day, everything come together. And I think one of your boys that used to be in the radio game, Elgin, he helped us out.
O'Donnell.
Yeah, Elgin helped us out that day. I think he tried to run it back from fullback. We kicked deep to Elgin, and he was at fullback, and he ran it up, and we turned him over, and we scored in the corner, I think. And I don't think Pup ever let him forget it. So
there you go, Elmo. You got a first shout out on the podcast, losing the Galbraith Shield. Well done.
Actually, a lot of those boys are getting together this week up in Millbrook to cause some carnage up there, and obviously tell a few lies as a bit of a pre-season effort before the weekend. So they'll still be going strong by the weekend, I'd imagine.
Yeah, Mike Wilkins got a hold of Simon and I want us to go, but we just couldn't. We've got people coming down and family and that sort of stuff for the weekend, so it just didn't work out for us. But it would have been nice. But we'll see them over the weekend too, so looking forward to it.
So I was just going to say, at what point, obviously you had that success there with Blues with the Galbraith Shield, that you and Simon decided, oh mate, we might have a go at another level here, put your name in the hat for the Stags, I suppose.
Yeah, that was interesting. I never had any aspirations to coach. I'm not sure how much aspirations Simon had either, but it's just I ended up helping out with the development team one year, coaching. Alan Frew was coaching, so I gave him a hand, and then the next year they wanted me to take over, so I ended up getting Simon to come along and help me with the development team. So it just sort of developed from there, and a story around the development team. Jesus, that was an eye opener in regards to, you go away on tour and that sort of thing, and it's the first time Simon, we'd coached club rugby, and we'd played for Southland, and then we go away and we go on tour, and then the first place we stayed at, the meal the night before the game, what some of the guys ate, it was incredible. It's if they had 10 pigs on the spit, they would have eaten the whole lot of them. And if the pudding was there, they'd clean the whole pudding rack out too. And my eyes were popping out of my head. And Simon and I looking at each other. These guys were going back for seconds and thirds, playing for the development team, playing Wellington the next day, those sorts of things. And my eyes were popping out of head, and they're going back for 3 or 4 helpings of pudding. So we sometimes things didn't go quite that smoothly with the development team, because the their idea of what we were trying to achieve was a bit different to what Simon and I were trying to achieve, and it took a bit of turning around. Talk to them about their food intake, and like you go to before the game, you go to the meal for the game, and they're laughing and singing and all this sort of stuff. And we were of the mindset that they should be concentrating on the game, those sorts of things. So yeah, there's some barking going on. So, but again, what you do has been a development coming from club then to development. If you make some mistakes along the way, you can get away with it. And there's no doubt we made some mistakes along the way, but we learned, what was needed to, I guess, to go to the next level.
Because a lot of the coaches probably in the current era don't go through that, the club system, and then to development, come out of maybe Super Rugby and straight into some sort of an assistant role and then go from there.
Yeah, look, I've probably doesn't matter what I say, but I've always had a beef about that. That I think there's three areas to coaching. One is, you've got to be able to you've got tactical and technical understanding. There's actually four, and then you've got selections, and then you've got the other area is building a culture. And it was interesting, I had a coffee with Jamie Joseph and Roger Clark when they were down last, and I spoke to Jamie about it, and I talked to him about exactly what you were talking about. And he totally agrees that the coaches today, they've got no understanding. But what we talked about was that the culture and the selection process of the whole thing is probably 40% of being a successful team. And these guys are very good tactical and technically players, ex-players, but they don't understand how to build a culture. And the selection side of it's just so huge, yes, he's a good player, but how's he going to fit into your culture? So how you get that mix right is pretty important. So, that's something that I think has been missing with coaches along the way, about being able to, to have that understanding, that background of, you've made a lot of mistakes, you've got all this grounding behind you, and I think it's impacting a bit on, I guess, this, what happens in those teams these days.
So tell us how you built that, because that's been the constant right in this conversation. You brought that up, maybe without knowing it, but 5 or 6 times. I don't think there's any coincidence around that, So, because often with these teams, and the higher you go from a performance level, almost the more disparate the group is that you kind of got to bring together. And until you get them in the room or together, you don't really fully know how that's going to mesh.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what the ethos was there from that culture piece that stood you and Nibs, I guess, in such good regard.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One, if we step back from the team itself, it was that when we decided that we were going to put our hats in the ring and build a team that could get some results, we decided that the most important thing was to have not only a squad of 25, 30 players, but a group of 60 players that were available to play for the Stags, that understood our calls, understood the culture that was being built, and also having the fitness levels and that sort of thing. So at that stage, Daryl Thompson and Peter Scout were picked to coach the development team. So we sat down with those guys and says, okay, if we're going to be successful here, excuse me, we need to have a group of 60 players that that can pop in, pop out, and it's a seamless process. So over the next couple of years, we built a squad that they understood everything that we were doing. They were doing all the fitness with us. So we were training, doing pre-season training with a group of 60 players. Understand there was some Southland players that weren't available that time, or there was guys playing Super Rugby that were up the road. But we had a huge squad that would, they would bust their guts and come out and they'd do a lot of skill work with us, a lot of fitness training and all those sorts of things. So that's an aspect where, and we, to be honest with you, we started to get success with the development team before we did with the Stags, because they won the competition one year, which was a fully fledged, this was Auckland, Wellington, and Scouty and Tomo did a fantastic job with these players, and they won the development team. Well, we were licking our lips. We were starting to win the odd game, versus having 2 or 3 seasons of winning one game, and we're all jumping for joy and and those sorts of things. But we were starting to win some games, but we saw this this cog that was starting to work in behind us that was giving us this depth of players, and we're starting to have to use them, and we could see that we're getting benefits out of it because they were using the same line-outs, those sorts of things these days is probably just bread and butter that, the development team is doing the same as what you are. Back in those days, it was probably quite unique. And they were coming in and it was seamless, to getting these players in. So that was an area that I thought was really, really important, that created something that, carries us in good stead over the years that we were coaching. And hats off to the guys that work with us. And it wasn't easy for those B coaches because at times, we're getting injuries, and it's always it's the worst job in the world being the B coach because you don't know who you got next week, because we're not telling you till later on the week and that sort of thing. So we had 1 year, so we made sure we improved the communication because it wasn't going as the way we wanted to seamlessly. So we had somebody within the groups that were liaising because as a coach, as a rep coach coaching the premier team. Your day could be from fixing problems off the field, people drinking, getting into trouble, those sorts of things, to selections and injuries, all those sorts of things. So we needed someone to liaise between the two squads. So, that was created and created a better atmosphere for those guys that were coaching down there, but definitely wasn't easy for those guys. So that was the foundation that we'd built there. And then in regards to the culture, Simon and I went in there with the attitude, and this has been honest, we didn't know everything about coaching, and we had some good guys in the team. We had the Jamie McIntoshes, we had the Clark Dermotys, we had some guys in there that had some knowledge. So we went in there, we had our ideas of how we wanted to play, and we basically, we set up a strategy where we had a good pre-season. We sat down and we worked through protocols for the season. So something that's probably missing, I believe, in some of the teams that have come after that we've dropped out of there, we sat down and set the protocols around, and it was all about team first. Okay, so everyone knows about it now, but back in those days it was like everything we do was around about team first. So if you misbehave, Nick, and I sat down with you and say, okay, so these are the team protocols. How does that relate to being team first? And you've been an individual gone away and done something wrong. So we put those protocols in place, and then those related into how we wanted to train, all those sorts of things. So again, we had a measurement, and no one could escape the issues, and that's coaches and everybody. If you weren't performing to those standards, you'd be held accountable. So that was another key factor. But again, the selection thing was, I think, pretty important. And again, sometimes you've got to look at it and you've got to say, you start coaching in an era where you don't know for a start, but sometimes you have a bit of luck too, in regards to some of the players that are coming through school, and I honestly believe Southland are in a position now that they're, I can see signs where some of the players that, what Boys High have done, what they're doing with the academies and all those sorts of things, that's probably another topic that we can talk about later on, but we're in a position where we're getting the John Hardys coming out of Boys High, the Robbie Robinsons, those sorts of things, Jamie McIntosh, all those sort of guys, the Josh Beckwiths and those sorts of guys. So starting to get those players coming out, and and they were just there. They wear their hearts on their sleeve. They were workhorses, and they were intelligent rugby players too. So you start to bring all those things together, and it just reminds me of a story. When you talk about those sorts of things, Josh Beckwith was at school when I first started coaching the Stags. So I got told about this boy and I watched him and those sorts of things. So I went along and watched his first club game, and he played Woodlands. He was marking Roger Newell at the front of the line out. And first line out, Roger grabs his jersey, and then, you don't get away with it these days, but he turned around and he dropped Roger, from the first line. So to me, I just ticked the wee boxes.
Yeah, good to go.
He's hard ass, and then, he hits rucks, all those sorts of things. So there you got yourself a player that's, schoolboy, straight out of school. Roger's been around for a long time. Woodlands, they're hard asses. He goes in there, boom, down this guy goes in the first line out. So I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah,
so,
that's good.
Yeah, so, and then John Hardy and those sorts of guys. And then, so you got a base of players that you start to think, there's a bit of talent here. And then we had players that were, we didn't have a good relationship with Otago in those days. So we said, bugger them anyway. So we started a bit of a stealth visits to, I'd go to club rugby in Dunedin. And the first one, no one knew me. Well, by 2/3 of the way through season 2, they were just about booing me going to season, in regards to who you come to watch. But, the Kendrick Lynns, the Jason Carwells, the Tim Boys, all guys that, that basically weren't getting a chance on Otago, but, Simon and would go up there and we'd say, and you don't always see the best in players in club rugby. What we're just looking for is to see that, they did something during the game that said these guys could go to the next level, and we saw that in all of them, and then you sit down and have a talk to those guys, and they are fitting the culture that you wanted to build in the team about hard work, and so they had a connection to the Southland area too. So we started to bring those guys into the environment, and it was, and then if we go back to the thought, we weren't, our knowledge of the game was okay, but to go to the next level, you've got to have a good understanding of the game. So we made the point, you're talking about culture, that we're coming here, we had some good ideas, we're setting protocols in place, we're trying to build a good culture and those sort of things, but we weren't the knowledge books of technical and tactical understanding at that level, and no disrespect to some of the coaches before us, but, when we talked to the guys about that, they said, well, no, we're pretty happy to see you. You're not doing too bad. But, it was like we'd go into situations, and if I didn't know something, I didn't bullshit, and neither did Simon. We'd say, we don't know. So have you guys got some ideas on how we could, do things better? And and to me, that's part of, and they talk about it all the time these days. It's about, empowering the guys to come, make decisions and those sorts of things. And to give you an idea, it's like, as we, start to get a great squad together, Josh Beckius would, he'd look after the lineups and those sorts of things. So my role was more about technique and, all those sorts of things. But I'd come along and I'd say to them, hey, listen, we want to attack around the front of the line and I've got some ideas here. But I'd only have half an idea. But I know that as soon as I started talking about it, they would take over and then they would buy into it, and then they'd come up with the move around the back or the front and those sorts of things. So, it's a self-fulfilling, prophecy that you give them the ideas, they take over, and away they go. So, so it's does that answer your question a bit in regards to?
Oh yeah, it's great stuff.
I've never heard that story about you doing these border raids to go up there and what's club rugby.
Oh yeah, no, it was interesting, and I don't know, I'm a bit of a smart ass at times, and I love doing that, because and I got some great stories about playing Otago too in regards to some of the episodes that happened there. But you'd go there and then
don't be backward in bringing those out. That's it's so we'd go there and we'd get people looking at us and people saying, "Oh, piss off! You don't come up here and steal all our players." So anyway, if we go to Otago, they were another team that used to, we were the Wee Brothers, and a bit like Woodlands. And with pup and those sorts of things, it was like we'd get hammered and then we'd improve. And Steve Martin was coaching them, and they had Nick. Who was the first five? Nick Evans, brilliant first five. And we were getting better and better. And they'd come down here one day, and Nick Evans. I was in Otago. We played them, and Nick Evans won the game for them in the end. And Steve Martin, hell of a nice guy. Got a lot of time for him. Yeah, he's a great man.
Hell of a nice guy. And I'll never forget, Steve came to me after the game, and we were just about to leave to come and shook my hand and says, hey, listen, keep the lip up. You guys are, you're playing solid rugby. You're doing okay, but you're just not quite where the big boys are. He didn't say in those words, but I knew what he meant, So that stuck with me the next year. So anyway, we started to get, players like, Scotty Cowan was coming down too. We started to build a big squad. So we went to a pre-season game against Otago. We probably didn't realise how good we were starting to get at the stage. So we went to a pre-season game and we rolled off the bus there. We were late getting there. We rolled off the bus and we thought we had some good players and they're starting to come together. Anyway, we were 20 points down after 20 minutes, and that's just getting off a bus. You're not ready to play rugby. Well, anyway, they were hooting and roaring and they're strutting around and all that sort of stuff, and then Steve had a big smile on his face. And anyway, we started to come back at them. Well, in the second half, we took over and we were offloading and we were playing a more expensive game, and we were starting to use the whole width of the paddock, where again Southland used to be just a forward orientated team, and we had a lot of their players, the Tim boys and all those sorts of Scotty and Kendrick Lynn and Jason Cowan, all playing for us, and we started to kick their ass, and then we got we finished the game and we beat them, and a bit like Brent, I turned around and here's Steve Martin, he was sort of dumbfounded in regards to how we would beat them, sort of thing. So that was the start of that thing, and that side of beating Otago, and and then over the years, I think in my last 3 years, I think we lost once to Otago in the last 3 years, and we became big brother, and and it was just fantastic that we, these guys, we'd go and play Otago, and it was like we're winning, doesn't matter what happens, you know what I mean? So and it's just a special feeling in the team, and so that's my Otago stories, and
good.
And then we like those stories.
Yes,
I think it got to the stage where Southland and Otago almost couldn't play each other pre-season anymore because they were just smashing each other. Yeah.
And it's we played Otago for their last game on Carisbrook, and
That's right.
and I think we played a middle of the week game too, and we come down and we played Otago. And this is the big game to see in Carisbrook away. They played 3 pre-season games, and it was like soup. The ground just cut up. Yeah. So anyway, we played them there, and we ended up beating them that day too, and that didn't go down very well either. I think we ended up about 18-3 up at half time, and they come back and we won about 26-15 or something like that. And so me being me, who's the radio guy in Dunedin that does all the...
Paul Elson you're talking about?
No, does the radio stuff for... you see him on Facebook and everything. He's done it for years.
Dwyer. Paul Dwyer.
Paul Dwyer interviewed me after the game.
Good stuff.
He did.
And Dwyer.
Anyway, he'd asked me about the game, and I says, what a disgrace. I says, your last game at Carisbrook, and I said to him that, you played 3 pre-season, curtain raisers on the ground. The ground was like soup, and I says, you're lucky it wasn't dry and would have beaten you by 50 points. Well,
There's the quote.
Jesus, did he get on the bandwagon? I think it was in the paper the next week that David Henderson, and Paul Dwyer, him and I haven't seen him since then, but I'm going to, next time I do,
Yeah, that's good.
I want to remind him of that wee conversation. But yeah, we had a lot of fun in those days with Otago, but it was a good healthy rivalry.
We better talk about a couple of Shield wins. I mean, mate, just talk us through 09.
Yeah, that was an interesting one, because I think the year before, you guys are correct me if I'm wrong, we played Auckland in a Shield Challenge up there, and we just lost.
Should have won, yeah.
Yep.
There's a learnings there. I think a lot of learnings for the coaches and the management. I think we overpsyched the boys a bit in regards to playing, and we were before the game and everything, there was a lot of talk about, you've never done this, since 59 and all this sort of stuff. And I think Lester even got to the stage. Lester was manager at the stage. He had some grass that he'd bought up from some. You guys remember this better than me, and all the guys.
What's that story?
This is the famous piece of grass that he brought up from Rugby Park. So this is exactly this is the same piece of grass that you play on when you're at home. There's no different plant.
Yes,
but
good.
I think
Got it from the hotel.
He grabbed it from the hotel.
Oh, I
right?
see. Right.
Yeah. So he's, and the boys are looking at
It's
him.
the story that matters.
Yeah, and we spoke a lot about winning the game and that sort of thing, and then we went out there and I thought we froze. We only lost. Wasn't a big score, and we only lost. And so anyway, to cut a long story short, we decided that the next time we get a Shield Challenge, we just want to be relaxed. And we'd gone pretty well. I think we'd been on we'd won a few games, and then it was time to go to Canterbury, and we flew up there, and we had at Burnside, we had I think there was a run over, a bit of a practice before we went up the day before, I think, in regards to, might have been 2 days, I'm not sure, but went up there and we had a warm up and we had a team run. and nothing went wrong, and everyone was so relaxed, and it was just a good vibe in the team. And
you want to bottle those moments, don't you?
You do, and I don't know how many times that, Simon's pretty superstitious, but I don't know how many times he'd say to me before, a warm up before a game, or he'd say, "Oh, we're not switched on, we're not switched on." What do we do about this? But it was just one of those times that we both looked at each other and said, "No, these guys, they're pretty onto it." So we went into that game, and you look back at the game now and you think it was a hugely exciting game and everything, but I'm not sure if it was.
It wasn't a great watch, really, was it?
It wasn't a great watch, but it was the atmosphere and those sorts of things. But there's a couple of for me. There was a couple of special moments. Not only just winning it, it was at halftime we'd. I'm not sure what the score was, but we ended up in those days at Lancaster Park, we ended up in an elevator. We jumped in the elevator, and here's Rob Penny and his guys in the elevator with us. And Simon tried to crack a joke with them going down the stairs, and Rob sort of standing there.
We've seen a bit of that look.
And this is probably just how the whole team were feeling, but we got out of there, and Simon says, "Oh, he didn't take too kindly to that, did he?"
Oh, that's great.
Well, by the end of the game, Will says he's not going to take too kindly to this either. But anyway, there was that moment, and then it was for me, it was really special because my father was part of the 59 team, and as soon as the game finished, I thought, I've got to ring him. And I rang him up, and he was at home with about 4 or 5 mates, those sorts of things, and he couldn't believe it. It's like I could have waited 2 hours to ring him up on those sorts of things, but it was just, the spur of the moment thing, just to give your father a ring. So,
that's awesome.
And he was in the 59 team, so he had a few tears in his eyes, which was good to see. But
he wasn't the only one.
But it was just, I don't know. It all goes in a blur. You go into the changing rooms, and you were there, Nathan, and it's just. It was just so special in regards to the players on their faces, and then the bus trip back to the hotel. The night of celebrations. It wasn't flash, to be fair. In regard, nothing untoward happened, but it was just. I think we drank every bar dry. I think I remember telling you, Nathan, that I ended up in a bar at the end of the night, and it was an outside bar, and it was full of Southland supporters and everything, and I think this was about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I was full as a bull, and I decided to leave, and they give me a standing ovation. I turn around and give them a wave, and then I turn around and I walk straight into a lamppost. and I was down, and I was out to it. So they woke me up. And
it's not the quite walk-off story I was thinking it was going to be.
I had a bad enough head as it is, but just to hit a lamppost. So they got me up, and they cracked up, and so we were back to the hotel, and then you get there, and then you've got moments with all the players there. You got their families, their girlfriends, those sorts of things, and it was really surreal. And we, you end up in a room, and we were, you got players there. We were, singing and dancing for the whole night and those sorts of things, and it was pretty special. And it's just something that you'll never forget as long as you're alive. And and then we did it a couple of years later, which was that was another special occasion too.
Well, and then the defence is the following year. I mean, man, they're beating Otago, that game against Auckland, which is written into folklore, right?
Yeah.
With the snowstorm and the clearing of Rugby Park, and then going out and beating them. What was that, 9-3 or 9-6 or whatever it was? Just, mate, they were scenes that, I mean, to be honest, I don't think you'll see again.
No, and we were a bit oblivious to, before games you're out with the team and that sort of thing, and you go back under, and then you come up, and then you get in the box, and then you look out, that Otago game, the crowd for that, that was unbelievable, and you can imagine our biggest worry, because Simon and I were worry warts, but it's like we lose it to Otago.
Yeah, that wouldn't be. Yeah, I know.
But again, you see the crowd.
That's all sorts of pressure to carry, though, right? Isn't it funny that here we go, we win the thing for the first time since '59, and then all of a sudden you have to carry the weight of not losing it to the mates up the road.
And the crowd just absolutely loved it. But it was a terrible game too. Wasn't it? Both teams were just tooth and nail just into each other and those sorts of things. But and for me, looking back is just. The crowd, you just look at the stand and then you'd see around the end of the grounds, they were just chocker of people around the grounds and, and then the terraces were just chocker and then we'd score or we'd win and everything would just, just erupt. And, to be part of that, just, that was pretty special to me just to, and again, I think we defended it 5 or 6 times and then to lose it to a Canterbury team to come down and they were stacked.
Yeah. Yep.
Sonny Bill Williams, you've first 5 played for the All Blacks. You got who was the halfback, and then you had
Andy Ellis,
all those sort of guys. They were pretty stacked. I guess before we go there though, we if we go back to when we won the Shield for a start, we had to go and play Wellington the week after in the semi-final.
That's right.
This is probably something that's forgotten.
Oh, that's true actually.
This is probably something I forgot that over those years we actually made the semi-final of the full competition. 2 years in a row. We were winning 9, 10, 11 games in a season, which is just phenomenal. But,
This was a different NPC too, wasn't it? This was not a NPC that was like a warm-up to or sort of an afterthought to Super Rugby. No. Super Rugby players all played NPC in those days.
Yeah, like we played a Wellington team that had Perry Wepu, had Conrad Smith, had Ma Nonu in the back line. Those scary brothers used to play on the wing for Wellington. The dreadlock boys that used to play for the loose forwards and everything. The number 8 that got killed. What's his name?
Chris Masoe.
Chris Masoe is one. It's the
Jerry Collins.
Jerry Collins.
Rodney Sowialo.
We played those guys in a semi-final. We had
decent side, isn't it, when you go through the names?
Yeah.
We had one training run before that. Like we had to pull the guys together because we did a tour around provincial Southland too, and we ended up in pubs till about Tuesday or anything, and we had to get everyone back together, and we had a training run on the Thursday to go up there, and we had an outstanding, you talk about heart, and with those guys, we didn't have to play the rugby. I think time I got there, I was full of the flu or something, some other virus that I'd picked up along the way. And I went to bed after the game, the Wellington game. But those guys, they went up there and they just gave it everything. And I think we lost about 7 or 8 or 10 points against a top Wellington team. But it was just.
I was just going to say there was some interesting bodies showing up for that first training on the.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it was like. For the first part of the training run, we just had to give them some sprints and that sort of thing just to clear the lungs out. There wasn't really anything that was cohesive or organised in regards. It was just like a team run later on the week, some sprints and everything just to clear the lungs out. It was a bit of a frightening experience going up there thinking we've got to play Wellington because they were just waiting for us. But no, the boys put an outstanding effort and dare I say they probably had a big night that night too.
So there's something about winning it in 09, but you were going to talk about 11 as well too, and obviously doing it again. And there's a real statement that comes with being able to turn it around and to lift the thing again 2 years later, right?
Yeah, it is, and it's I think we were starting to, correct me if I'm wrong, we were starting to get into some financial troubles by then, and the team was starting to lose players and those sorts of things, and excuse me. And I think we also had to play a Wednesday game against Hawke's Bay before that. So we went to Hawke's Bay, lost to them up there.
One of those weeks.
It was the start of Storm Week that year, 2011.
Yeah, and so we had to play Hawke's Bay, and then we had to go down and play Canterbury down there. And, again, when you look at a Canterbury team in those days, you look at them and you say, so what are their weaknesses? And you say to yourself, you're doing... we were doing reviews and previews and all those sorts of things, and you're sitting there going, you're looking at what are the weaknesses you can show the guys that, hey, this is our attack opportunities, playing a Canterbury team. Well, it was really, really difficult, So in the end, we decided that the best way we're going down there was to basically starve them the ball. You give Canterbury team, the ball, and it was a dry day. they're going to run you off your feet. And they proved that a couple of times. We gave them the ball and they scored some beautiful tries from inside their own half. So we went down with a philosophy that that we were just going to hold on to the ball. Didn't matter how ugly it was, we were going to just keep hold of the ball. But, we had some talented players there. I remember, vividly that we were holding on to the ball inside our own half at times, and we were breaking them down, and Kenny Lynn was making a couple of breaks through the middle and those sorts of things. We're unlucky ourselves to not score a couple of tries, some really good tries. We had, by this stage we were, you're talking about guys, loose forwards and that in the wide channels. We were starting to bring those into our play. That's another story too, where we spoke to Whopper, the year before that. We wanted to play more expansive rugby, and he looked at us like a confused dog, a puppy, as though, no, this ain't going to work for Southland. Well, we started to, and we ended up with the likes of Elliot Dixon and that running in the open channels, against the likes of Canterbury and those sorts of things. So that was a day that, by all predictions, we should have got beaten. We hung in there till the second half, and then we started to, it was quite a frustrating game because we held onto the ball a lot inside their 22, and we were creating opportunities on the outside, and we just weren't going to those. We were just wearing them down, but we managed to get across for a try, and then I think James Wilson kicked a goal. Well, anyway, the most memorable thing for me, in this game was that I was in the box with Peter Scout. Peter, the great man he is, he's been around rugby for years. And anyway, we're sitting there, and we're at the stage where halfway, if you can remember, we're just picking and going and winding the clock down. And I think it was 3 or 4 minutes we had to wind the clock down.
No team could do it better, eh?
No, and they changed the laws after that in regards to holding on to the ball, that sort of thing, because it was what Southland did. Jamie, they had it under control. Anyway, I was sitting in the box there, and I think Daryl Thompson was on side, and then I looked down, and here's Peter under the desk.
Physically under the table.
He was on his chair, but he's under the desk. And I thought, he must be doing his shoelace up or anything. So anyway, in a couple of minutes,
he's still
down there. And I says, "What are you doing, Pete?" He says, "I'm praying." And here's Peter Scout down there, and he's had his hands like this, and he's praying, and he didn't lift his head up till after the final whistle. And Peter's not a religious man, I don't think.
I was going to say, if you were going to delegate that responsibility, I don't know if Skelty would be there.
No, but anyway, it was just a cracker,
That's great.
But again, to win it up there a second time was pretty special too, And there's new guys amongst that group that had that. We didn't hang on to it that long, and I think we ended up. By that time, we were in 2 divisions. They'd split the NPC, and we ended up getting relegated, that year. But it was pretty special to win that because we'd lost a few players, and again, there was some pretty hefty financial difficulties we were running into, and so it was pretty special to win that. I think we only held on for 1 and 2, but another memory that that is there forever, really.
I remember the plane ride home from that. Actually, one of the unsung heroes from that game is probably Glenn Morrison, who managed to actually get everyone to the airport on time, and because it was quite tight to get the plane ride home. But it was just quiet on the way home. I think the boys had just absolutely buried themselves to win that game.
Yeah, but you get to the airport, and again the airport was full and those sorts of things. It's it's a special occasion, and like we've had a reunion since then. We had a 10-year reunion, and it may seem funny, but we ended up at Spates Ale House. They looked after us. The ILT looked after us and everything. We were there, and we were playing that 2009 final again, and we're all sitting around yelling and screaming. At the end of the game, we were all jumping in the air. So, we weren't part of it. We were just watching, and it was live,
That's great.
Oh, yeah. And I was yelling out, yelling out things. Get your head in there, boys, or, what are you doing, Hards, and all this. You can, because you're not coaching then, and the players aren't, they've moved on. But it was really great to catch up with them. We hope to do that again in another 10 years. So.
Who would be, if you had to pick a couple of players that as a player that you played with, that stand out for whatever reason, and when you coached that stand out for whatever reason, who would they be?
Oh, in regards to playing, you couldn't go past. That's an interesting question. In regards to playing, there's a lot of players that I had a lot of respect for, but I had a real good relationship with the likes of Simon, because we played club rugby together, those sorts of things. And we ended up, I was captain of Southland at times and he was vice captain, and then at sometimes he was captain and those sorts of things. So, pretty special relationship there. In regards to, there's players I played with too that I had a lot of respect for, like the Rada Smith and the Brent Shepherds and all those sorts of guys. There's those sorts of guys. In regards to when I was coaching, now that is a difficult one because, there's a core of players that that contributed a lot to Southland rugby, and for different reasons, you see them as special. Probably the first one, and you're probably going to gather who this is Jamie. His intellect, his ability to bring the boys together and those sorts of things was pretty special, and we had a good relationship with him, and and he was one of those captains that wasn't afraid if he thought something wasn't right in regards to what we're doing to come over and say, hey, listen, we've got to do something here, but he did it in the right way and those sorts of things. So there was guys like him, there's being a loose forward, the Hardys and boys and Dixon, all those sorts of guys were pretty special guys. Mule, he was another one that you got a lot of time for. Cabbage, Hawley, I could go in for Kendrick Lynn, and in other ways, the likes of Glenn Horton, those are the guys that, he had the goose step in that, Tim Cornforth, was another guy that, he played for us a wee bit, but he was a really good player, those sorts of things. There's a whole lot of players, and even the Jimmy Cowans and the Scott Cowans, in different ways, they mean a lot to me, but in different ways. But, it's really hard to put to say these guys were just the out and out standouts, but there was so many, because there was an era there that these players all had great leadership skills, great work ethics. We weren't the best team going around. As you can imagine, we're playing Waikatos, the Aucklands, all these sorts of things. But these guys just, and if you want to sum it up, was when we played Hawks, Waikato up there after we defended the Shield, and their hooker
De Malmont.
Yeah. It was another terrible game. I don't know that we played that.
Horrible conditions.
Horrible conditions. Yeah. He dived over, he drove over the line, and Cabbage had a hold of him, and he marched him back 1.5 meters while he's over the line, and back over and stopped him scoring to winning the game. Now, to me, that was all about, we go back to the team spirit, and we go back to the culture, those sorts of things. And the guy, he's still playing now, but those sorts of guys,
you can't coach it, right?
You can't coach it, and you can, like Simon and I will probably go down and folklore as one of the best group of coaches because of our record. But these players have got to take a lot of kudos for what they did in regards to over that period of time.
We're going to have to end this conversation sometime soon. But I did want to make that point because, we talked about you finished your career for Southland in 95. I wanted to talk about 1995 because it was one of my favourite years of covering. We had just started as a young buck from a radio point of view. This was we just won promotion back up to the Division 1 competition. Lost 8 games, got a bonus point in 6 games, and they were incredible scenes in 95. Tended to lose our way a little, I guess, as a union from then, because almost I think we went chasing players, I was going to make the point around that core group of guys that you had, and you have to be in the right place at the right time, but you also have to be good enough to create the environment to bring the most out of them. And I was going to talk to you about the old S on the left breast, and in a professional sense, how that can maybe not mean so much to a certain group of players. So the challenge of doing that in a professional environment, I guess that in some ways could be harder than maybe it was with a good old-fashioned Southland team like the old days of 95.
It's interesting. And again, I did play in a team where there was a lot of imports towards the end of my career. And, I would have to agree with you that these guys come in, don't get me wrong, they come in here and they're great guys and those sorts of things, try their best, but there's always something in the back of their mind that they're only here for a year, those sorts of things. I'm getting paid to be here. Are you going to get that pound of flesh out of them? and I think that's what we're able to do with a core of players, from the time that Simon and I were coaching. But again, if I just want to touch on, when I finished coaching with the Stags, I didn't see that coming forth after I finished coaching, but I see it now. And I think that's what's been missing, the ingredients, and I just want to hats off to the likes of Steve Mitchell and that he's helped create that with. But again, it's like all these players that are coming together now all got that, that S on their heart, those sorts of things, and they're playing for more than just getting a paycheck and those sorts of things. And I think it's going to hold them in good stead. They're doing a really good job with the young guys, which I haven't seen, with Brad's era, Dave Hewitt era, some of the other coaches. They were in here to get a result and get out of here and future progress their careers, which is fine. But again, it's not what we want down here. But and to me, I see that starting to develop down here now, and it's a real nice thing to see, because it's had a lot of similarities to what we done in regards to how we built up a group of players, and you can just see the camaraderie starting to happen, and they've got an academy in Dunedin now, which is and there's some good players coming through, and I'm looking forward to the next 2 or 3 years. Mightn't see everything come through this year, but they're heading in the right direction.
Just, I know we need to wrap it up soon, but I'd be really interested in your take on just provincial rugby and at the moment and in the future. I mean, it's obviously a pretty special part for you. You've captained and coached Southland, but there's obviously a lot of talk about its future.
Yeah, there is, and I'm pretty disappointed in where it's all headed, because we could see when we were coaching where things were heading. Club rugby was starting to self-destruct and those sorts of things, but no one would listen, and the Steve Chews of this world and that sort of thing. All the money was funneled into at that stage it was provincial rugby and the All Blacks, and then Super Rugby and those sorts of things. So there was no thought of what's happening in provincial rugby. How do we develop things, keep things going down here? So it's just died a natural death. And to me, and this week's I've been pretty angered this week to see that the players' unions come out and threaten to break away and set up a group and those sorts of things, where, to be fair, Rob Nichol, and I'm being honest here, wouldn't have given a hoot what's happening in anything below the 200 players that they're involved in, that they get paid for, and the 37% of the total revenue that they get, to get on TV and say, by going with this, this project or position one that's been touted as going to be, solve the problems, and to get on and say, we're going to look after, it's grassroots rugby we're concerned about, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. They have never had any inkling of wanting to look after them. It's a self-fulfilling for them, and they understand that if they can get this number one across the line, they're going to get more money, and then we've got the ever growing, broad group of players that need to be paid. You've got the women's game now that's growing and those sorts of things. So, I'm pretty disappointed where it's at, and I feel sorry for the unions, the provincial unions, because we all, let's be honest here, we all know if position one's taken, the provincial unions are going to go back to they're not going to be professional or semi-professional, so there's going to be no money made available for them. So we're just going to go back to when I played, which, is that the right thing? I don't know, but again, it's going to kill Southland rugby. Our academies are going to be based in Dunedin, so it's going to be the academy for the Highlanders, and how that works, I don't know, but it's been pretty disappointing to see what we've got. But again, to me, they've left it 10 years too late to start worrying about what's happening in provincial rugby. you know, and also in the provinces, you know. Then we've got league and all those sorts of things. They're doing a marvellous job in regards to promoting the games, and it's really, really disappointing, and it's hard to watch.
We'll bring it full circle to finish with, because of course it is about Blue celebrating 150 years this weekend. Guest speaker Buck Shelford. We threw this in about marking Buck, actually, and you told us a great North Harbour story, so you better finish with this one.
It's we played against North Harbour, and they had some, you know, they had Botica and all those guys playing, and so we played them. I think we lost to them. They're a pretty good team in those days. So no, it was interesting. Awesome to get the chance to play against a guy like Buck Shelford, and he's probably another one that, you know, playing against Southland, he was probably going at 2/3 of what he normally did, the pace he went at and those sorts of things. So so it was good to play against those guys, and you still had the opportunity to have a beer with them afterwards. Like, we end up in the Avenel, you know, till all hours in the morning, you know, having a beer with the likes of Buck, and he won't remember me when he comes down here, but I'll probably tell him that I tackled him in the showers afterwards. It's the first time I got my arms around him, I think. So, yeah. So.
But you got to shoulder tap.
Oh, yeah, no, as I mentioned to you, North Harbour approached me afterwards about going to play for them, and I got approached by the union afterwards. But as I said to you guys before we got on air here, it's you know, I was pretty loyal Southland at the time, and then you look at, okay, so what am I going to achieve when I get up there? You know, I could play for North Harbour for 2 or 3 seasons. Am I going to go any further? And you know, I think I was pretty realistic in regards to how good I was as a player and as a coach. And sometimes I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but you've got to be realistic in regards to where you're at. And I made a decision not to, you know, I don't know where it would have ended up, but again, to me, I think I was pretty happy to stay down here. I've had a great career, and I probably got to the limits where I could achieve down here. So so that's my wee claim to fame. So
it was a pretty good career,
mate. On the evidence of the last hour or so, you know, you can tell the contribution that you've made at all levels of the sport, Goof. So enjoy the weekend, and appreciate your time today. Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Thanks.